Good evening and welcome to tonight's Northwest Startup Demo Fall 2011. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Ed Hansen. I am the chair of the demo committee, and I'd like you all to join me in setting your cell phones to silent or vibrate or off before we get started. Excellent. We'll see if it works this time. MIT Enterprise Forum of the Northwest is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization that's part of a network of 28 worldwide chapters of the MIT Enterprise Forum, headquartered in Cambridge, Mass. The MIT Enterprise Forum is managed by Technology Review, an independent media company owned by MIT with a global readership of 2.6 million. Our mission is to inspire, connect, and educate our region's entrepreneurial and technology business community. I'd like to take just a quick audience poll before we get started. How many people have never been to a demo event before? If you could raise your hands. Excellent, this is great. Who is this the first time you're at any MIT Forum event at all, whether it be demo, Venture Lab, or the dinners? Excellent, great, thank you. Welcome to our event. I'd like to thank tonight's demo sponsors and partners, Adobe and DLA Piper, and our very special thanks also to our season sponsors, University of Washington's Foster School of Business Technology Management MBA, Savos Stoll Reeves, Point B, Summit Law Group, and Kibble and Prentice. I'd also like to draw your attention to page 4 of your handouts, where you'll find a list of upcoming events. So save the date for our January 19th Mix and Mingle and our January 25th MIT Enterprise Forum event, Venture and Acquisition Funding. It's a new game. All right, and now we'll move on to the demo event itself. So how the process works this evening is we're going to have 6 companies come up and demo their products. This is not a funding pitch. This is not a startup pitch. This is just their chance to get up and just talk about their product. And the goal is to wow us. The goal is to get us excited about what kind of innovations can come from small business, can come from people in their garages or doing some co-share with their company, and what they can bring to us, and how our world's going to be different when these companies are all very successful. The process, typically how we pick these 6 companies, we had just shy of 40 submissions, so 40 companies said, yes, I have a product, I want a demo, and they sent it to our first round of judging for review. Of that, we picked 12 to come to our screening round, where we really put these companies through the ringer. I mean, we made them sit in very hot rooms with drinking lots of water with no bathroom in sight at all, and then made them demo for us. And after that afternoon, we picked the 6 that we have presenting today. This is our 10th demo, so we've been doing this for a while, and I get a kick out of watching what types of companies come through, what flavors of companies we're seeing. This being Seattle, there's always enterprise software companies of some kind coming through, and I think that's never going to change. It's been roughly about a third of our submissions, and probably will stay that way forever. But what was really interesting this year, and probably of no surprise, the number one type of company to submit of the 40 I talked about earlier was someone with a social media bent. So they had some sort of angle, whether it be building a community, hooked onto Facebook or Twitter, or anything really social media related. That is definitely very, very popular right now. And my own personal favorite category to monitor is what percentage are things. Like, now, I'm a software guy, I love bits, but when people who are out making stuff to actually to hand out and sell, about 10%. So I'm always excited to see the things. And a couple of them, a couple things actually made it through the process. You'll get to see that tonight. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our judges. So in no particular order except to how I got their name and email. From the Alliance of Angels, Jackson Wagstaff, if you could raise your hand. From the Keiretsu Forum, Matt Hooper. Puget Sound Venture Club, Kelly Siegel. Seraph Capital, Villette Nolan. One of our judges is still stuck in traffic. He'll be joining us in a bit. Seattle Times, Brad Dudley. Our at-large judge, who some of you may recognize, is Steve Johnson. Steve was the former chair of the Venture Lab and a former chair of this event. And I gave him a hard time for showing up at 6 o'clock as opposed to 5 o'clock when he used to show up. From Madrona Venture Capital, Julie Sandler. And from TechFlash, Greg Lamb. All right, so how the rest of the evening is going to work is one at a time the companies will come up. They'll demo their products for 8 minutes. And then the judges will get 5 minutes of Q&A with them, and then we'll do the transfer to the next company. Please hold all your comments until the end. Once all 6 companies have gone through, All the presenters will come up to the front to answer your questions, basically Oprah or Phil Donahue style, and then the judges will go into the back and deliberate on who's the winner this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dave from Avado. Take it away.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anybody here in the room that likes, when they go to the doctor's office, filling out paper forms, what seems like probably the 100th time, and then after the appointment, you have a heck of a time even getting information back from the doctor? Well, those are the types of problems that Avado solves, and in fact, there's billions of dollars of unnecessary spend in the U.S. healthcare system related to those issues. As you said, my name's Dave Chase. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Avado. We're a patient relationship management company. So let me explain and demo what that means. So just put yourself in the position of you're thinking about a new doctor. And you're probably going to ask for a friend for a recommendation. And then if you're like 80% of the people, you're going to go check out their website. Unfortunately, most doctors' websites are abysmal. And so the first thing we do is we have a white label website that they can get up and running in less than an hour, and also very easy to update. Just for example, this is the news section, which I'll come back to in terms of how you'd do this. So then and I should say that one part of our business model is it's the free part of our freemium model, so doctors no longer have an excuse for having a bad website because they can take advantage of ours for no money at all. So then what are you going to do next? You're going to schedule an appointment if you decide to go with that doctor. Today, what happens, you have to call during office hours, you probably get voicemail, phone tag, and then if you're lucky enough to get an appointment, you get hit with a boatload of paper, 98% of which you filled out before. So with Avado, if I hop over to the patient side, I got timed out here, so let me just log in. So there's a virtual handshake that happens a la, LinkedIn or whatever. And then once you're in, not only can you schedule the appointment online and save that hassle, but you get automated triggered reminders about that appointment. So you see here the mail, it's a little bit of information about this appointment, and then you can go ahead and check in for that appointment. What you'll see here is any information you've entered before, either with another practice or yourself, it's going to pre-populate any of these forms. Of course, if you've moved, you can easily update this information, and then you can go ahead and submit that off, and you're checked in. Not only does that save the patient 20, 30 minutes of time that they typically build in at the front end of your appointment, but from a practice point of view, it's actually a very costly process. If you look at, there's a practice just up the hill. They spend $500,000 every year taking paper filled out, manual filled out forms, and clerical staff entering them. So it's a great value proposition to the practice. Okay, so let's fast forward. You've had the appointment. What often happens if you've gotten some treatment or if you have a chronic condition is you're given a paper form. So let me just shrink this up a little bit. So this is an example of a paper form that would be typical that you'd get. The problem is people lose these forms. They forget to fill them out. A lot of people fill it out in the parking lot before their next appointment. What we do is, instead of that, and also that affects reimbursement. Sometimes the doctors can't get reimbursed if it's not properly filled out. So what we do is not only give them an iPhone app as a screenshot, or you can come and check out our iPhone app, or in the web interface, you'll see one of the providers here is that spine clinic. You go in, and again, the demographic information is pulled in. And then in this case, you have these sliders, which you can slide across, say how much better you feel, or click there, or manually enter that information. So it's great for the doctor. They can intervene if things aren't progressing the way they might like. Certainly going to help on reimbursement, and just makes that process a lot easier, as well as having it via structured data. The doc that is a using this believes this is a big game changer in the way healthcare works and is a real definition of collaborative care. I've talked about patient relationship management. As you know, any relationship's about communications. And unfortunately, doctors are very busy people. And, funny thing is, I hear more frequently from my dog's vet than my kid's pediatrician. And that's because they're busy people. So we want to address that. And so what we do, because the doctors basically have a choice. They can either answer the same question, so maybe it's something in the news, hundreds of times, if not more, or they can just go radio silent, which unfortunately a lot of them do. So if I go back over to the doctor side, one of the things that we do is, I'll have to log in here again, is we give them a publishing tool that makes it very easy to not only keep that website up to date that I showed earlier, but you can go in and do these broadcasts. And so let's say there was an interesting article that you wanted to share with your patients. This, as you may have noticed, was a OB/GYN scenario. So maybe it's a article or information about exercising during pregnancy. I'll paste in that URL. You see the previews come in here, say you like this particular image, and then you can share that as narrowly as just your coworkers and your staff, as broadly as that public website, as I showed you, or you can pick subsets of your patients and then publish that off. After you publish, now there's an article there, you can also publish this to Facebook and Twitter and use the Avado's URL shortener that we provide. So again, made it very easy for them to maintain those ongoing communications. So those are a couple examples of what we're calling collaborative care. It's just really changing healthcare. Increasingly, healthcare is going from do more, bill more to value and outcome. And we've gotten a great response so far. We've been in the market about 2 weeks, already have about 1,000 paying licenses signed up, more in the queue. And we're actually announcing here that we're going to make it available to any UW affiliated doc. We're blessed to have a top medical facility as well as medical school, so we're going to make that available for them. In case you're wondering about where did Avado's name come from, it's inspired by a little village in Italy where people live longer than anywhere else in the world. And we believe that's a great inspiration for us. We want to help patients live long and healthy lives, and believe Avado can help do that. And we invite you to join in the Avado movement. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions.
Testing. Okay, we'll take some questions from our judges over here.
So you sell it to the doctor's offices, and
Yes.
then how do the patients get connected in?
Yeah, so it is, the question was, is it sold to the doctors? Yes, the doctors are the paying customers, and then they invite in their patients. So, we've just been going through this with some practices we're new. So they basically send out an invite, not unlike, sending out invites to LinkedIn or something like that. Then that virtual handshake happens, and then they can exchange information.
Are you finding that it's smaller medical clinics that are interested in the technology and the website, or are you getting a response from the larger hospitals as well?
We're getting a little bit of inbound, but our approach is, kind of taking a page out of Salesforce.com's book of start small. I'd rather get a quick no than a long maybe, and there's a lot of long maybes in healthcare from my experience. So yeah, the small practices, they will make a quick decision, and they're the ones who are the first to adopt it so far.
And it's individual doctor subscriptions, correct?
Well, it could be a practice. Like one of the, I mentioned the number of licenses, so that actually represents a bunch of doctors within a large practice.
Okay, thanks.
In a doctor's office, in terms of going from paper to Avado digital, what are the big pain points, particularly in medicine, that there are to making that switch?
The big pain points of making the switch, or why they're making the switch.
What are they?
Oh, so the pain points really boil down. I mean, in terms of the immediate thing, it's the administrative overhead. The doctor that I was referencing that's been doing the virtual handshakes, he literally has no administrative staff now. A typical doctor's office has 4 to 5 administrative staff for every doctor. And so certainly that's costing them. With the cuts in Medicare that are coming, they have to really look at the bottom line and run more efficiently. They haven't been the most efficiently run practices. So that's the biggest thing in the near term. There's a shift going on in terms of how healthcare gets paid for towards outcomes, and then that's the big driver. It's hard to get the right outcome without the patient being a part of that process.
Let me rephrase.
Okay.
So if I'm working in a doctor's office and predominantly we're working with paper, in terms of making that switch, going from paper to all of a sudden using Avado, what are the big hurdles that there are in place to suddenly eliminating paper and moving to digital?
Okay. It's surprisingly not that bad in terms. I mean, certainly as far as the technology implementation, this practice from standing start was up and running in a week, and it wasn't like a week solid at a time. It's really what happens is they have to rethink some workflow and what do they actually want to change their forms. So that's really kind of the pain, is them rethinking. Oh, is this actually the right way to go through that? And I mean, it's kind of true of any IT implementation. You should rethink the process rather than just simply automate the paper process. So that's probably the biggest single thing.
Can you talk a little bit about your integration with the patient management software and the records management that they have? And if you have integration with software suites that are out there?
Yeah. You can get value without it integrating, but the nirvana state is you integrate. If they have an existing EMR, for example, there's a standard in healthcare called HL7 that defines that interface. And so I didn't have time to go into it when I went through in the demo, but in that check-in process, I showed you could, I just showed the one tab of the demographic information, but here you see this, medical records. So that is coming in across from the system and pulling that in via an HL7 interface.
So we have time for one more question.
How do you address patient privacy issues with this?
Well, very carefully. For example, when there's notifications that go out to the employee or to the patient rather, they get a notification that there's something waiting for you from the office. There's no information in there. It's kind of like you get an email from LinkedIn that there's something waiting for you. And then once you're secure and logged in, certainly we have all the best practices in terms of security practices. Then and only then can they actually see their information. So we're very conservative about what we put in any message over unsecured link. Okay, thank you.
Today I'm here to present Bookiejar. It is a social reading and publishing platform. Nowadays, so if we ask everybody, so what is the biggest challenge for writers nowadays? What would be your answer? Getting published? Well, yeah, getting published is always very challenging. But actually, the biggest challenging for writers right now is how to get readers to read their books. With all the self-publishing services available there, we know that there are already 130 million books being published in the modern history. And every year, there are 1 million new books coming out. So for writers who want to make it big, it's a very, very challenging world. They face this tremendous competition. How can they solve this problem? Bookiejar provides the answer. So what we do in Bookiejar is we connect writers with the readers directly. The writers are able to publish their book from chapter 1. So we have the unique ongoing publishing model that writers can publish chapter by chapter. This way, the readers can engage from the very beginning, can be their cheerleaders from the very beginning. And if the reader likes the writer's work, they can comment, they can recommend to other writers, they can provide feedbacks. And also, if they really love the writer's work, they can even request an ebook signing. So today, let me show you how we are providing this kind of capabilities to people. And so first here, I'm a new writer. So here, Dragon Rider. I'm a debut writer, and I write some time travel fantasy. And you can see at the beginning, I just published a few chapters to see how it goes. And very surprisingly, after I publish it, I see their readers saying, very good setup. So what's next? Then I feel encouraged, so I decide to publish more. And then I can go to Bookiejar interface. When I go to this already published book, I can upload one Word file very easily. And also I can do some nicer thing, like add a book cover to make my book to be even more attractive, because now I start to feel encouraged and I want to be more serious about my writing. So here I choose a book cover, and I add a new Word file with 10 chapters available. And now I say, save these changes. And it's almost almost immediately I can see my new book is available here. So earlier, if you remember, it was a plain book without a cover. Now the book cover is available here. And also, if I open the book to verify, I can see that all these 10 chapters are available already, and people can read from there. And so if I'm a reader, and I've been follow this writer, so I'm a friend of this writer. This reader, the reader can either, they will receive a notification in their email, or if they go online, go to our website, they can see a notification there. Or if they go to our this coming application, they will see a notification there. Here, you probably cannot see it. Let me show you a photo I have earlier. So as a reader, I will, as a user of Bookiejar, I will have my feed to keep me up to date. And now this reader has, who liked this book earlier, who was following this book, now he can see a notification saying this book has been updated. So just by one click, he can read the new book here. So let me show you. And here I can increase the font. And if I want to check other notifications, I can see my feed. There are more notifications. There are other people who want to be my friend. There are people who want to introduce his writing to me, things like that. Or some other reader wants to introduce a book he enjoyed to me. And then I really like this writer, so I decided that it would be really cool if I can get a signature from him. Earlier, in this printout book world, I can go to a book signing event and hold my printout book to this writer and saying, could you sign my book? But now this publishing industry has moving very fast, in a very fast pace to ebook world. So what we have here is that reader can request making a signature from the ebook very quickly. So like here, you can see the reader can hold his e-reader and going over to a writer saying, I really love your book, can you sign it for me? And then this writer can sign it on their e-reader device, any touchscreen device, either Kindle Fire, or other tablets. They can use their hand, or they can use a stylus, and they can write something nice, or even draw a good image. So that's how, and this signature will be embedded into the ebook, and the reader later can have a collection of them, and they can use a widget to show it off on their blog, on their website, etc. So here on Bookiejar, we're really connecting readers and writers and make them to have a bond, make the writer's life easier, make talents to be discovered. And at the same time, readers will be able to have a much better reading experience. Because while reading, they don't want to be bothered. However, after reading something really nice, just like after watching a very good movie, you will want to talk about it, to share it with friends. And once you really, really love a writer, you will want to approach him, want to chat more, ask about the background of the story, or ask to even get a signature. So here, that's what we're doing. And we believe that will be the trend of publishing. And actually, since we beta in May, we've got about 800 writers and publishers signing up on our site. Plus, there are people from Amazon and CreateSpace and Barnes Noble look for a job in our company, and they say you guys are defining the new future of publishing industry. So, okay, thank you.
All right, some questions from our judges.
How do you attract readers to your website? And my second question then would also be, how do authors get paid and how do you get paid?
Okay. So there are two questions here. So to attract readers, right now we are going to release this application. It will be available for millions of readers. And besides, there are many reader groups and social reading sites which have already accumulated millions of readers. We are actually doing marketing there. Yeah, and for your second question about how we get paid, how the writers get paid, writers can sell their ongoing books or complete books on our site, and we will do royalty sharing. We will get 30%. Yes.
What kind of interactive feedback do you have between? You mentioned some messaging between the writers and the readers, but do you have any other stuff in mind?
So you mean the connection between writers and the readers? Besides,
right. What can the readers, give back to the writer, so to speak, and what can the writers, push out, and is it, global or directed to just people that have the books, or what?
So you're saying, do we have a globalization plan?
No, or just when it comes back to communication between the reader and the writer.
Right.
Right. What kind of things are you envisioning being possible?
There are many things possible. Besides just writing comments, feedback about a story, there can be real-time chatting, for example. And also there can be those book signing events hosted online. Because right now, for those signing events, people has to be all together. They need to probably travel together. If I like a writer in UK, then it's very hard for me to attend his any signing event. However, this can be done online, remotely.
I think this is brilliant because many very famous books, like The Count of Monte Cristo, were actually written as serials so that on a regular basis a new chapter would be produced and the readers would get very excited. And I think you've done a beautiful job with this interface. Do you anticipate bringing this into the community in an event way, perhaps either with webinars or live events? Do you see a way for the community to really connect with readers that way in addition to online?
So for the ongoing publishing model, that is right now we support online only. But I know that in some writing groups and communities, even in Seattle, their writers have events that they come together on the same day in a coffee shop. Then they write together. And there will be like 100 fans of them as their cheerleader. So once they are writing, like they first decide a storyline, and then some work on the first chapter, some work on the second chapter, and then the readers will give this real-time feedback. And it's then after this event, after this one-day event, they have a whole book together. So I can see this live event happening in the future.
Maybe I missed this, but can any writer sign up on BookieJar, or do they have to write something and then submit it, and then BookieJar decides whether or not to accept them as a writer on their site?
Right now, we have this open platform because our goal is to support any talent people. We feel the existing traditional publishing model it is very good. Of course, I appreciate Random House or Penguin, the books they picked. I appreciate all those editors' work. But I feel because the bar is so high, so there are many people didn't get the chance to be out there. So we want to be first off, let everyone to be there. But then, of course, for us to promote books, we will still promote the nicer ones. And also, we believe with more and more readers join, then with their comments and voting, the good ones will eventually flow up.
So are there, because it's a completely open format like that,
right.
Are there censorship issues around writers submitting work?
Censorship issue.
I mean, is there any kind of way to monitor, appropriateness, or can people put photos in there? Or?
Yeah, we have a content guideline, so we only we only support those book content that can be accessible or available in normal bookstores. We don't really want to be too, yeah. So.
Oh, okay. One more quick one.
Okay.
With Amazon, Google, Barnes & Noble, and to a degree Kobo, I suppose, making inroads into self-publishing, some more aggressively than others, are you finding that a lot of your writers are submitting into multiple ecosystems? And if so, is there any complementary business there?
Yes, actually, that's a good question. Yes, with right now, it seems like many big players are seeing the power of self-publishing, and they start to have their own self-publishing platform. Our service is non-exclusive, so it means people can submit, and then they can also submit in other publishing platforms. And actually, we do distribution for these authors as well. Like if they have a complete book, and then we will, right now we have a deal to distribute our book to Kobo already, and we will distribute to other self-publishing platform. But we feel what those other self-publishing platform is missing is that they don't really link the readers and the writers. So although people can comment on books, but they cannot really directly have this real conversation, real bond with the writer they like or with other readers. And we, that's why we feel there's an opportunity here.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name is Dave Widener. I'm the CEO of CleverRain Technologies, and we set out to solve two problems. First, web shoppers abandon their shopping carts at an astonishing rate, upwards of 60%. And secondly, there's some great analytics platforms out there that provide great data, and that data is amazing and very useful for your future visitors, but not very useful for the visitor that's at your site right now. And so we asked ourselves the question, how could you go about using analytics in such a way in real time to be able to convert that person that's at your site today, right now? And we built the Droplet Engine. The Droplet Engine is a web-based, cloud-based interactive marketing service that allows a website owner to monitor and then engage in real time their visitors on their site with targeted content. Droplet brings a Nordstrom-style customer service to your website. So our primary users are large and medium-sized companies that are technology-driven and are looking for new and innovative ways to engage with their visitors online in order to drive their revenue or to drive their donations or to just increase their user base. Right now, I'm going to show you a couple different examples of droplets running on websites, and then we'll look at the droplet administration. This is Droplet Tech, and Droplet Tech is a consumer electronics website that's integrated with Droplet, and integrating with Droplet is a single line of JavaScript, and once you've integrated with Droplet, at that point, no other changes are required to your website in order to engage with your visitors, and you can change this on the fly. This particular site has a Samsung Galaxy tab that's a dropship item. Now, e-commerce companies love this because dropship items are high margin. And Droplet, monitoring the behavior of the visitor, chooses to engage this visitor with a discount. This discount actually has a promotional code drilled into the back end, so if the person purchases today, they automatically get that discount without having to remember some kind of promotional code. Now, Droplet can display anything effectively. Images, video, forms, any combination of the above, and then third-party content like Wufoo, SurveyMonkey, DocStock, JotForm, SlideShare. And Droplet uses a JavaScript-based display technology, pop-up technology that's not blockable, that is multi-screen and mobile capable. Let's go ahead and close this, and we'll take a look at one other example of this on our site. Now, if a different visitor comes into the site and they traverse over to this area of the store, think about a brick and mortar store, someone coming in a little bit differently. They're presented with a different kind of incentive or a different kind of engagement. In this case, it's a form for a trip to Hawaii. This is actually not a real trip to Hawaii, but we've had a number of people fill this form out online, very interestingly. So Droplet can engage visitors in different ways, and Droplet behind the scenes is monitoring my shopping behavior so that if I decide to add something to my shopping cart, and in this case, it's going to be this very expensive printer, Droplet's going to look to engage me differently. Why? Because I'm a different kind of visitor on this site, and now it's going to give me a free shipping discount. So what you can do with Droplet, independent of the display of content, is target in very narrowly into your visitor set to give a very personalized experience to move that person to act. I'm going to move off of an e-commerce site into a site that is not an e-commerce site. This site is called Droplet University, and it's just a messaging site. It's a general content site. So why would you need something like Droplet? Well, on our general content site, sometimes we want to move a visitor to act. We want them to see something that's special. Maybe we've added something on our site that we want to make them aware of. They can ignore it, but they can also choose to follow me. And in this case, if they choose to follow me, Droplet drives them over to the page that they want to show, that the website owner wants to show the visitor, and then pops up a video for them to say, hey, here's something else that's going on our site. It's very interesting. And I'm going to show you the Contact Us page because on the fly, I'm going to change this Droplet in the middle of this demonstration. Right now, we show a little thank you. It says, thanks for coming. Give us your comments. How does that look? Great. Then the person can fill it out or not fill it out. Now let's go into the Droplet administration. If I can find it. And we'll take a look at what this means with respect to the cloud service. So when you sign up for Droplet, and we're a freemium service, this is your home page, free to use, 100 droplets for free, and then you can step into one of our subscriptions. But when you come into your Droplet account, you'll see that there's home, accounts, design, rules, and analytics, which is where we're going to spend a little bit of time. The Droplet store, which is where you purchase additional droplets, purchase templates, or step into a subscription. Let's take a look at design. Design for Droplet is really about the media library. It's about rich content that you can upload yourself, or you can use the content that we have available. And then you build a template. And off the template, it's basically taking content and adding in your copy, right? Pretty simple. So I pick out the content that I want, I add in the copy that I want, and now I have some kind of design, which could be the thank you, could be a SurveyMonkey survey, or it could be the Droplet that we just showed that came onto the front page of Droplet University. But that's still not a Droplet, because a Droplet is both the design and behavior. So let's take a quick look at what this might look like from a Droplet perspective. This is that thank you Droplet that showed up a little earlier, and you'll see that it has that design right in the middle of it. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Okay. Well, I can't scroll down. So Dave's having a failure. Sorry, we're having a little failure with the monitor, with the machine. But anyway, so Droplet is both content and design. So let's go ahead and take a look at rules. And Con, could you grab me a mouse real quick? Or show me how to scroll down on this? It's not. Okay, so great. So a rule is basically how you're going to go about engaging your visitor in real time. And so a rule is basically comprised of a schedule, what rule is going to drop, which droplet is going to be presented, and then the details around that. And that can include anything. So Droplet can target a visitor coming in from Oregon on Tuesday night after midnight that's been on a certain page for 15 seconds. So it can be very narrow in how it goes about targeting. Right now, we're going to change this droplet to the SurveyMonkey droplet and save that. Now, the power of Droplet is right here, that on the Contact Us page that we just saw, Droplet now, instead of displaying out the earlier thank you, will engage this visitor now with a SurveyMonkey survey. You cannot do this with SurveyMonkey today, but Droplet lets you take that targeted content and drill it right into the customer set that you want to engage with. And lastly, Droplet is an analytics engine at its core. And what it allows you to do is monitor your behavior, monitor the behavior of your visitors, and refine how you want to engage them over time. But analytics without action, it's just data. And Droplet gives you the power to use that analytics information in real time to interact with your visitors in new and creative ways. Droplet lets you step out from behind the counter and interact with your visitors in order to drive your revenue or grow your donations or grow your user base. We believe Droplet is the next generation of interactive marketing on the web. Thank you.
All right, who wants the first question?
So the droplets then are not just like click event driven, right? There's some other things that the page can monitor or the session or whatever.
Right, we monitor on between 20 and 30 different conditions that the website visitor has. So their geolocation, the time of day, the behavior that they have on the sites that they've clicked on.
And you set those up specific to a page?
It can be specific to a page or it can be based on a behavior. So a droplet can basically engage you. For instance, you saw the one that came up that was associated with free shipping. The free shipping droplet could show up on any page because it's more associated with how I'm shopping, not necessarily how the website owner wants to engage me. So I could have chosen any products. As long as they went over $100, it would have engaged me.
Okay.
Do you have the capability to plug into live chat type things? I've seen some droplet type things. You know, if you go to Dell or HP or somebody like that, they have a droplet that pulls up a customer service rep. And can you add that kind of capability?
Today, we don't have chat behind the scenes. The idea of having with Droplet is really to be more automatic, right? And not have that human element behind it. That human element is out there. The mechanism is really more about engaging. The person's shopping. What I believe is that people want to buy, but they don't want to be sold. And websites have an opportunity to engage with you, not to pound the person looking at the site the way the old, pop-up technology was really horrible. But pop-up technology is very, very widely used today in very targeted ways to help move people. They have amazing click-through rates. Yeah. But we haven't considered chat at this point.
So do companies buy a subscription or buy the software or the back-end analytics? I mean, who would be like your ideal buyer?
So our ideal customer is usually mid-size or a large company that's technology-driven, and it's a subscription-based product. We sell two ways. We have the freemium model, so you can just sign up for the service, but we sell down through channel partners, primarily in web marketing space and e-commerce, large e-commerce platforms.
Okay.
Other questions here?
So, if it's a very complex website with hundreds of products, how well does this scale when things get complex? Because it seems like there's a lot of self-setup involved, and so I'm just curious kind of how easy that is when you have a lot of scenarios, a lot of different possibilities, and kind of how to set that up, essentially.
So today, it would obviously be very dependent on how that website owner really wants to engage. If they wanted to engage on every single product on their site, it might take them a long time. But more often, they want to do something that's more event-driven. They want to be able to say, you know, free shipping during the holiday season, or we have a special on children's clothing this month. We have one customer that's an organic clothing company that surfaces her brand because she has a tough time competing against the big players. So she surfaces her expertise with Droplets about how she sources her materials. So Droplet isn't necessarily about always giving a discount on a product. It's often about messaging.
Any other questions? Villette?
What are the systems that do you need to integrate this product with any systems on the market? And if so, which ones do you work with best?
So at this point, Droplet integrates with basically any website with a single line of JavaScript. We haven't integrated into any back-end analytics at this point, although we've had discussions with a couple analytics companies, primarily because what Droplet offers is the action associated with the analytics, and the analytics companies are like, wow, we got data, but they don't know how to help their customer move forward. But at this point, we haven't integrated with any of the big data out there yet.
Great. I think we're out of time for questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ron, in case you were curious. This is Val. At Redpoint, compassion compelled us to find some simple solutions to some of the challenges that caregivers have and patients have in the hospital environment or the nursing home environment. How many people here have had an IV? And it probably looked something like this one, where you had the tape and a little bit of strain relief. Unfortunately, this solution has about a 70% failure rate in one form or another. Most of them due to movement at the catheter site. And the failure can be something as severe as this, and that's pretty easy to do, or it can just be an occlusion. There's a whole bunch of medical terms that I don't really have memorized, but movement causes a lot of problems. There's over 300 million IVs in the US alone each year. About 200 million are from here to here, and the other 100 million are PICC lines and central lines. Val's got our solution, which for the peripheral from here to here.
This is the Steadline IV sleeve. It's not attached to the skin in any way. For elder skin, for compromised skin, for people who have injuries, for young skin, allergies. This will stabilize the catheter in any seated position from the elbow and below. And you can physically see that it's not going to move. You'll see the strain is taken on the little circular disc. We weave the tube around once the IV is placed, once around the first disc, and then once around the second disc. The caregiver would see that there was a pull by the tension. All they have to do is release that and put it down. The nice thing about this is that all other devices are actually attached to the skin, glued to the skin, adhered in some manner. That can cause a lot of issues. This does not touch the skin. This isn't necessary, but our focus groups have proved that people like feeling in control, and they like being able to have movement and not worry about dislodging, pivoting, pistoning, and causing all kinds of medical issues.
Patient populations like the geriatric, where the skin's fragile, the solutions that aren't this are glued to you. And so if you have a pull, the skin just comes off with it. Or with tape, it can tear. Or if you're diabetic and you're sweating, the tape won't stick. So having a solution like this that's one of those, why didn't anybody do this before us, and it is patented, has tremendous appeal. The market itself, there's 45,000 ambulances in the U.S. In the U.S., I mentioned the 300 million catheters. The U.S. is about 25% of the world market. There's 900,000 acute care beds, 1.8 million long-term beds. If you think about acute care, you know, one of those that we hadn't thought of, but we heard when we were starting to show the product, obstetrics.
Maternity.
Yeah, how many times does the husband faint and take the lines with him? How many times? How many times is the woman, you know, delivering a baby, mental, where they've had head injuries? We already mentioned long-term care, the elderly. The applications are tremendous, and what we're really hopeful about is Medicare, with their new reimbursement policy, is withholding today 1% and very soon 2% of the reimbursement to providers. And they're bonusing that back out in a formula that 30% of it is patient satisfaction. And our belief is you're going to feel a lot more secure with that sleeve, and you're certainly more comfortable than I am with this tape on my arm that I don't have quite as much hair as I did a second ago. And those are going to show up in patient satisfaction scores. And if it does, our little $5 device becomes a revenue generator for the hospital. And we're no longer trying to sell it based on the cost of tape. There's a company that was ahead of us. They came up with a product. It's called the StatLock. It's the one that's glued to your skin. And they were able to show a pretty significant return because they took the failure rate from 70% to 6% through stabilization. So you can cost justify the product against tape. The advantage we have over their product, one, we're not glued to the skin, but two, if you need to move the site, you can use the sleeve with that patient for their stay. Whereas with their product, once you take it off, you got to get another one and glue it back on.
The device breathes, it's disposable, and it's very, very soft.
To give you an idea of the market, a 5% penetration is a $75 to $80 million business in 5 years. That's it.
All right, let's get right to questions then.
So, is the device patented at all?
Yes, patent pending.
Okay, and then my wife's a nurse and she deals with this issue all the time. So, how come it took so long to have such a nice device show up?
I get that question a lot. You have to have a bad pull and be allergic to tape and whine a lot. That would be me. This is actually the first of 12 devices in this family portfolio. This one just came out about 5 months ago.
Well, we started shipping it this month.
This month we're selling.
Are out. PICC line is in prototype right now, submitted to the FDA. Central line's in prototype, submitted to the FDA. And then there's the pediatrics, Foley catheters, and then some others that I don't want to talk about in an open room. It's class 1, that's not attached to the skin. Basically, you have to send them a report, and it takes about 2 months, and you get the approval back.
510K pre-market.
Thanks, guys. That was great. In terms of your go-to-market strategy, what sales and distribution channels will you be using, and how will you tactically get this great product out?
It's going to depend on each of those vertical markets. The acute care market, which is where most of the money's at 75, 80 million, about half of it's acute care. First, you start by finding the distributors, and there's some infusion distributors. What we need to do right now is get the patient satisfaction studies to substantiate it, get some hospitals trying it so we can show the patient satisfaction scores that we believe we have, and get some third-party evidence. As we build up the distributors and a direct sales force, you got to get to a certain mass before you can get into the larger resellers, the catalogs that the hospitals are buying through buying consortiums. And once you start getting the pull and the awareness there, then it just snowball keeps going. The biggest problem is getting hospitals to change their protocols. So you need somebody that's an advocate to go in and say, you really want to use this device. They go through the patient satisfaction or patient safety. Then there's the finance committee. And if we can show the patient satisfaction scores to the finance committee, comes on our side and shortens that 6-month process.
We're finding our early adopters are EMS and military is very interested because of the transport of patients.
Is there any additional infection risk from having more surfaces than and textures and things than you do with just tape? You know, having
Every time tape is removed, it takes another layer of the skin off. This
Well,
doesn't.
There's having the device. There's no different than your nightgown from that standpoint of infection, but there is the opportunity to put an antimicrobial on the device as an additional value add margin opportunity. And there's some really good antimicrobials out today that would go on the device and be good for the length of the stay of the patient.
Who manufactures it for you?
A company in Indiana. It's one of the few people in the world that can do the diverse material welding.
And if you scale up, I mean, what's your strategy for scaling up to a larger?
Well, they can handle us up through that 5-year projection, no problem. But we have the opportunity of buying the equipment because that's really their primary business is selling the welding equipment. We have the opportunity to buy that. And
Made in the USA.
Any other questions from our judges? All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for allowing us here.
Hi, my name is Isaac Nichols, and I'm the founder and CEO of Chirpsy. Before I dive into the demo, I'd like a show of hands from the audience here. How many of you have Twitter accounts today? How many of you have posted to your Twitter account in the last week? How about the last 2 days? How about today? As many of you have probably discovered, it's pretty hard and time-consuming to keep your Twitter account up to date on a day-in, day-out basis. And businesses typically don't have anything interesting to talk about every single day. So what they do is they go out and they have someone who's scouring the internet, looking for interesting content and news to write about. And they do this to build their credibility and ultimately their followers. So this is where Chirpsy comes in. Chirpsy provides businesses relevant and timely drafts of tweets. And we help you keep your Twitter account updated every single day. And we do this by leveraging a crowdsourced workforce. And this crowdsourced workforce is actually real humans writing content specifically for your business. So with that in mind, I'll dive into the demo. All right. Instead of creating a whole new account, I've logged into an existing account. This is for the Flying Apron. They're a local gluten-free vegan bakery in Fremont. They're delicious. And to set up an account on Chirpsy, all you have to provide us are 3 different things. One is your Twitter account, obviously. We use this, our workforce is then able to then look at your Twitter account and understand your writing style and that sort of thing. 2 is you give us writing guidelines. The writing guidelines are typically kind of what you like to tweet about, what you don't like to tweet about, basically the purpose of your Twitter account. Again, you're explaining this to real humans, what you like and what you don't like. And the 3rd element are keywords. And keywords, this allows us to, basically it's like we do a search engine. We go out and scour the internet for the latest news and blog articles using these keywords, use our relevance engine to determine what are the most relevant articles related to your business that day. We take the cream of the crop and we send that off to our crowdsourced workforce, and then they actually then read the articles over, determine are they actually interesting for your business or not. If they are, write a draft tweet, which then gets packaged up and sent to you, the customer, the owner of the Twitter account. And what you get at that point is a daily email notification. This is something that was sent out actually this morning. to Eric at the Flying Apron. I got BCC'd on it. And he agreed for this demo. And these are real tweets ready for me to post to my Twitter account. I didn't have to go and do all the research. They came to my inbox. So I can very easily click and edit to post right now, or I can go back to my dashboard. Whoa! I guess I'm on the Starbucks network. Uh-oh. Hopefully we can connect. I was on the local network here earlier. Let's try that again. All right. So here I am on my dashboard, and we have the tweets that got the same tweets in that email. And I see this first one up here, Bluebird's Flying Apron Bakery Almond Cherry Brownie Ice Cream is a vegan and gluten-free treat from across the street. So I'm going to look at this article, and just to kind of double check, I want to see what the worker was looking at. And here indeed is from a blog in Fremont. And down here we'll see that they offer this ice cream that's using the Flying Apron's brownies. That sounds great. So I'm actually going to go and tweet this. This is live. I have access to his Twitter account, and we're going to post this straight to Twitter right now. And that's it. You're done. And you can be on your day if all you wanted to do is send a tweet out. This next one down here, delicious red bean chili, I'll read that article, and I can look at this. Looks delicious. But this is, it's a recipe. I'm not sure this is something I actually want to tweet about. And generally speaking, the Flying Apron doesn't want to just tweet about recipes. So I'm actually going to reject this tweet. And what this does is provide an opportunity for me to give feedback to the workforce, to tailor it to make sure that in the future, please don't write or tweet about recipes. And I will reject this tweet. Again, that's a feedback mechanism to our workforce. So we can keep doing this, and when you're done, you archive them so they're out of your way, and this becomes a very simple pipeline for just going through and going check, 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 and you're done. And all of your tweets that we produce are still here. I can still find that ice cream tweet that I just tweeted there. So now how do we actually generate this content? Again, that's this crowdsourced workforce. I'm going to show you a little bit under the hood here. This is a task posted to Amazon's Mechanical Turk. For those of you who are not familiar with Mechanical Turk, it is a marketplace for small tasks that you can pay people piecemeal to perform for you for small amounts of money. For those of you who don't know me, I was the original technical PM who launched Amazon Mechanical Turk back in 2005, and I've been part of the crowdsourcing industry ever since. I have my co-founder here in the audience, Nathan McFarland. He's the founder of Casting Words, a transcription service that also leverages crowdsourcing. And I have two other founders who couldn't make it here tonight, who run a development shop in Fremont called Puget Works, and that's just a few blocks from the Flying Apron Bakery. So that kind of gives you an idea. We have, on top of this crowdsource-based workforce, we have our own reputation system and workflows that allow us to ensure high-quality content only comes through the service. Jumping back, the last thing I want to show you is pricing. It's a very simple subscription service, pay by the month, starting at $200 a month for 3 tweets every single day delivered to your inbox. We're still in beta, but I'd like to offer a very special deal for all of you attendees. If you're interested in playing around with Chirpsy, please email me at demo@chirpsy.com. Tell me why you want to use the service, and I will select the 5 best entries who will receive 2 months of free service. And that's about 1,000 tweets that'll be delivered over that time. So that's Chirpsy, a very simple service that helps businesses keep their Twitter accounts up to date on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Is there a way to time delay the tweets?
Yeah, so we haven't implemented that part yet, but the whole tweet delay functionality is coming. Basically, you want to be able to simply queue up. So on this screen here, this button here would allow us to sort of simply queue up to your favorite, to Twitter. We also plan to support, of course, LinkedIn, Google+, Facebook. This is all under development.
I know that tweets aren't really brain surgery, but I'm just curious, how do you control the quality with going through that Amazon workforce?
So we have a lot of experience with this, and it is a non-trivial part of the platform. But like I said, there's a reputation system that allows workers to virtually level up within the system over time. And eventually we're allowing things like being able to defend your reputation, et cetera. But there's a workflow. So every single tweet, at a minimum, is seen by 3 different workers as part of the process.
Well, my editor and I were kind of laughing about this company when we saw the description because it's a little bit like what we do at work. And now I think maybe I'll go for your $2.99 plan if you can do blog posts, and then I'll just sort of arbitrage my salary there. But yeah. I'm kind of curious to know what the capacity is for you to scale up and continue to get high quality tweets without, enlisting a full-on workforce and losing your cost advantage.
So I'm very bullish in our ability to scale. Like I said, I've been in this industry a long time. My previous company, TurkForce, I sold to Crowdflower in January of this year, which was a consulting business on top of Mechanical Turk. And additionally, there are numerous other basically microtask labor channels that we can tap into. And honestly, I'm not opposed to, having my own marketplace of dedicated writers as well, along the lines, depending on what's needed from a scale perspective.
I think this is. Is that on?
Yeah, it's on.
I think it's really cool, and I've got 2 questions. One is, if you can reveal it, is what do you see as the margins between what you have to pay your crowdsource people, and the other is more of a comment, which is after you make your tweet, you should you had the rejected status show up, but the tweet that you made, it should say tweeted.
Yeah. So
no, I'm just giving.
That's coming as well.
Yeah.
We've been literally working on this for 5 months.
You're in alpha, right?
Yeah, it's cool.
It's
in
early beta.
really cool. So about margin and thing. So margin's actually variable in terms of we ask the workers. It's based on, first of all, the relevance of the links that we send into the workforce. So if there's a high signal to or low signal to noise ratio or high signal noise. If every single link that we sent out was tweetable quality for the business, then obviously that's going to be cheaper because the cost of a worker looking at a link is going to, it degrades our margin, so to speak. There are plenty of margin there overall in these subscription plans, though.
Along those lines, you were talking about, you had mentioned, your relevance agent.
Mm-hmm.
And so the customer gives you some keywords and guidelines, and then what happens from there?
So the keywords, basically we have a pluggable search engine technology in the back end. It's leveraging, Google, Bing. We can also scour Twitter. You can plug in your RSS feeds if you're more technical and already know about RSS feeds and that sort of thing. But yeah, over time, this is something that we're going to tune, and again, using the feedback mechanisms, rejected tweets, we could look at those links, look at those sort of related sites, blacklist them, et cetera. Basically, there's we're farming the internet for tweets.
Right, and you're still dialing that in, understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, sorry, as a lawyer, I'm just wondering, how can you pull off this labor thing? Because, there's minimum wage in a bunch of different states, and I hate to be a pain, but it just seems like that's pretty important.
So it's Mechanical Turk and similar services. It's set up basically as contract labor. You set a price for a task, and the workers decide they want to do it or not. It's their choice. It's not, I'm not forcing anyone to do any work whatsoever, but simply by putting these tasks in an open marketplace, people decide they want to do it for you.
So they're independent contractors?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Bob Mile. I'm the founder of Tilting Motorworks. Tilting Motorworks was created to commercialize my patented two-wheel front end for motorcycles. This vehicle was designed to be a safer, more stable motorcycle, and the demographic we're shooting for is the aging motorcycle demographic and women motorcycle riders. More and more older motorcycle riders are wanting to ride motorcycles or continue riding motorcycles, but have some sort of difficulty due to some sort of knee or back injury in being able to support a bike. More and more women are the fastest growing demographic within the motorcycle space, are wanting to ride bigger bikes, but are unable to be able to support a bike while at a stop. But let me take you to the beginning. My contention is that all mechanical engineers start off playing with Legos, and I was no different. I happen to be lucky enough to have 3 young boys, and they let me still play with their Lego. Encouraged by my first model, I decided to go off into my garage where I have a little more sophisticated tools of cutters and welders and an old motorcycle that I decided to cut up. I was even more encouraged with this and decided I wanted to build a real street legal prototype that I could ride. So I took my idea up to Western Washington University that has a vehicle design program. I spoke to the head of the department up there, explained what I wanted to do. He listened politely and then told me that the idea had been tried before, it would be unstable, and it would not work. That was about all the encouragement I needed. So I started building. And this was the first start building my first front end that I was going to build on a Yamaha little Rebel. And finally, 2 years later, I was actually riding my street legal licensed tilting 3-wheeler, a vehicle that I had been told would be impossible. But there was a couple problems with this vehicle. One is, since I had so severely modified the vehicle, I had to take it down to the State Patrol to get it relicensed and re-inspected. As you can imagine, me riding this thing into the State Patrol, they kind of scratched their heads, looked at it, and signed it off, and told me, frankly, we don't want to see you here. They said that motorcycles are already classified as having 2 or 3 wheels. As long as you don't drill, cut, or weld onto the frame, we don't care. We see it as an accessory. I said, that's pretty cool. And so I decided to build my next prototype, which also solved this problem and also worked on my little horsepower issue. The original prototype only had about 25 horsepower and was kind of limited in its speed and performance. This one does about, this bike is 140 horsepower and does about 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds. A lot more fun. I was actually able to solve my suspension issue in the front, trying to get a suspension that could lean into the corners and still be have full lean capability over to 45 degrees. This vehicle steers, leans, and handles just like a regular motorcycle, but you have the additional wheel up front for increased safety and performance. This thing was just an absolute riot to ride. Encouraged by this, I decided to go into production. But I decided to get a little more sophisticated in my design and development and decided to go with a full 3D CAD programming package called SolidWorks. This allowed us to fully design, articulate the complete bike in 3D before we ever cut our first part. It also allowed us to generate all of our engineering drawings, which don't show up so well here. It allowed us to create our engineering drawings, of which we could then send out to local machine shops that were already making parts for the aviation industry and create these into CNC programs and make them parts. The design of the front end also was crucial to us because I decided to build my next prototype on a Harley-Davidson. And the Harley-Davidson crowd is kind of a unique crowd, very specific about the machines they ride, and I knew the looks had to be spot on. And so I was able to get help me design this. This is a model on a computer. Glenn Kerr, who is the president of the Motorcycle Design Association and an internationally renowned motorcycle designer, really took an interest in this project and took it on. So my recipe for success, you start with a stock motorcycle, doesn't have to be a Harley Davidson, any bike will do. Remove the front fork and front wheel, gather your parts together, and start bolting on. And this project only takes about 4.5 hours to do, to start with a stock motorcycle, removing the front forks and front wheel, and getting this bolted back into place. And to make the State Patrol happy, you can take it back to the stock configuration anytime you want. You got the bike, add fuel, and ride. And if you're lucky, you ride some more. I have about 17,000 miles testing of this prototype, including 2 trips, solo trips down to Los Angeles and back. And last summer, I actually rode it out to Sturgis. Riding this bike down the main street of Sturgis, people's jaws would drop. I had more photographs taken of this. It was just absolutely phenomenal. I was actually at Sturgis at the invitation of a major motorcycle accessory company that wanted me to have their bike at their booth to draw traffic. I succeeded quite well. But let's talk about the front end on the bike here. What I was able to do and what my patent relates to is the parallel structure of these 2 wheels and where my hubs fit down the center line portion of the wheels. That is what makes it truly handle, steer, just like a regular motorcycle. So if you're riding this machine and you don't look below your handlebars, you cannot tell that you have the additional wheel up front, and yet it is there for increased safety, traction, and performance. Having this structure required me to have a different type of braking system. You can see my discs right here, which actually mount to the rim, the actual rim of the tire, as opposed to the hub, which is on normal cars. What this does is it allows me to go with a much larger diameter disc, and I run 6 piston calipers back here. The stopping power on this vehicle is phenomenal. Next, the other thing that I was doing that was unique is this is your structure here for your what are called A-arms. You have upper and lower A-arms. What I did that is unique out of any vehicle out there in all of Seattle right now, actually I was going to mention to you, I did ride the bike down here today, and it is out on the loading dock. And you see out through that exit sign, I have some signs, and at the very, very end of this, when everything's all done, I'll be going out there. Anybody who wants to see it can come see it. But what's unique is this structure here where my left and right A-arms are actually coaxial. That's a mouthful. Normally your A-arms are opposed like this, but mine are coaxial. If your A-arms are opposed like that, what happens when the vehicle leans is that your wheels are called what they scrub. Your wheels will go in and out. By making it coaxial, I am able to maintain a perfect parallelogram structure in the front, so it's seamless to the rider. They don't even know they have that additional wheel up front. Then I started having some real fun with it, because this is where this aging motorcycle demographic, how do you then support this vehicle to stop? It's strictly mechanical. It'll still lean over. That's when I added in my hydraulic system right here. These pistons, you can see the pistons extending and retracting right there. And here they're both up and down. These 2 pistons exchange fluid back and forth as I'm riding around the corners. And with a flip of the switch on the handlebar, I can lock that up. So when you come to a stop, you don't ever have to put your feet down. Now people who can really ride motorcycles who can't support a bike, you get somebody with a bad knee again or a bad back. Or if you get a gal who wants to ride a bigger motorcycle, let's say 5'2", 110 pounds, trying to haul up a 900-pound Harley Davidson can be a real challenge. I currently have 2 issued patents on this and a 3rd patent pending, and I did ride the bike back up to Western Washington University to show the Washington professor. He was so impressed by what he saw, he actually brought out 2 classes that were in session out in the parking lot to see the impossible made possible. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, who's first?
It reminds me a little bit of the Morgans that were made in the 30s. You know, where
yeah.
But those didn't tilt as much.
Ashley Morgan just introduced them again. You can buy them again.
Yeah, I mean,
but they did not lean in the corners, no.
Do you have any plans to make it into a, put a full shell around it to get away from the motorcycle experience and more into the small urban commuter vehicle model?
Yes. I definitely will do that. Because one of the advantages of that, because with the technology that I have, you can put a full body enclosure on there because you don't need to put your feet down. So you can actually, and I was talking to another gentleman who's working, there's an electric motorcycle company up here locally that I could work with. So technically what you could do is you could get an electric vehicle that would be fully enclosed, and because it's classified as a three-wheeler, a single occupant can ride in a carpool lane with it.
And also, at what point do you have to get full-on testing, safety testing to, like federal highway safety standards and things like that? I mean, I know you're clear in Washington State right now, but if you go big, do you have to ever get?
Yep. It's just, again, all states treat motorcycles as 2 or 3 wheels, and it's just viewed as an accessory. So whether I add a saddlebag to the bike or I add this to the front end, they don't care. That's pretty cool.
I know nothing about cars or motorcycles, but is that true if you're buying a stock motorcycle and then altering it, or does that change if you're actually producing your own new motorcycle?
Right. If I were to build out a complete unit based on this technology, then I would become a motorcycle manufacturer and a whole set of rules.
Okay.
Right.
I do know something about motorcycles and cars, and I love this thing. So how much does the kit cost, and how are you going to market it?
We're going to go to the market probably around $8,000 or $10,000, and that's and then that is after you actually have the motorcycle. The go-to-market strategy is really neat because I don't know if you've ever seen out in the marketplace where they have trike kits where they put the 2 wheels in the rear of the bike. Well, there's hundreds, literally hundreds of these motorcycle shops all over the United States that are currently doing the installations on those, and they call themselves Trikes or Bikes or Trikes or Us or something like that. And what we'll do is just roll these out into all these independent motorcycle shops that are already doing these conversions out in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with the market either, but how's the front end of this different than the front end of the one, I don't even know the name you see advertised a lot?
Probably the Can-Am Spyder.
Yeah.
The Can-Am Spyder is actually, the parent company of that is Bombardier, and they make the Ski-Doo snowmobiles and the Sea-Doo jet skis. Mm-hmm. That's why it unfortunately looks like a snowmobile. And it doesn't lean into the corners. So you have to ride it like a 3-wheeled snowmobile. And for somebody coming from the motorcycle world,
yeah, that's a big difference.
You just can't lean into the corners. You got to kind of steer it like this. Pretty awkward.
Right. My other little question is, how hopefully it's difficult to flip the switch, on the.
Right. It's strictly in a prototype stage right now. What we're actually going to do is, in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be testing a prototype board and software that we have written that is going to automate it and be speed controlled.
Right.
So as you come to a stop, this thing will automatically lock up, and
or won't be able to go on unless you're at underneath a certain
right.
speed or something.
And then also, I think I forgot to show right in the back here, I actually have a motor and a pump system so that if you end up with the bike locked over at an angle, it'll automatically right itself. For any guy who's ever dropped a bike, that is really cool.
Any other questions from our judges? All right.
And again, you're invited all to come see it out back after we're all done. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Bob, don't go too far. I'm actually going to have all the presenters come up, and the judges are going to come with me into the back. We're going to talk about who our winner is this evening. And while we're in the back deliberating, Hannah's going to walk around with the mic. We're going to open it up to the floor for questions. So we'll be back in a few.
This is for Avado. You mentioned the integration with the electronic medical records, but what about the other back office, like appointment scheduling and things like that you talked about? How well does your service integrate with existing the other existing tools?
Right. I mean, the scheduling would be the second most common one. Yeah. So fine. There's as long as they're standards compliant, That's the real trick. And otherwise, it's kind of a one-off integration, which can be done, but they'd need to pay for that.
In the case that you, so far, have they been, are most offices on a standards compliance system?
I would say so. I mean, this hasn't, we're only a few weeks into the market, so we've done a lot of that type of work in past companies. But so far, the folks who are adopting our platform and are thinking about scheduling are actually just using our scheduling since it's included. I didn't have a chance to show that.
For Chirpsy, hi. So what do you think about technology? Do you have a plan to use type of technology replacing some human force? Question number one. Number two is, what about the real-time response? What if like a customer complain about my stuff? How much real time can you respond to that complaint?
So the first question was around technology, and if I'm interpreting this correctly, are you asking, could I over time introduce technology to start the sort of tweet writing process? Is that what you mean? So, I mean, obviously I don't know where technology is ultimately going to go, what's going to be capable, but I do think this is inherently a human type of thing. To be able to interpret, the writing style of the Twitter account, to be able to kind of determine what's good or, what's appropriate or what's not appropriate, that's a human thing. Also relevance. Identifying, whether this website is actually appropriate or not for the Twitter account is really, really hard. And actually, there's quite a few search engines who use products like Mechanical Turk to help with their search engine relevance and crowdsource this because, building training sets, et cetera. So I don't think the human element's going away anytime soon. The second question, what was that? Was the real-time response. So that is going to be improved over time. Right now, theoretically, you can get stuff through the system, in minutes, hours sort of time frame. So, stuff comes out on the internet. I can have workers looking at it, identifying articles and that sort of thing fairly quickly. We're talking hours sort of turnaround time. Feedback loop, it takes a little time to put the new stuff out, et cetera. But the time frames this is all really relevant. I'm going after the kind of the really recent news, breaking news, recent blog articles, that sort of thing. So, you can be the one who's breaking it on Twitter, so to speak. All right.
So it's for Chirpsy as well. So if it's for Chirpsy, I'm sorry. So I wonder how do you take care of copyright issues? As Walter said, if you were to collecting articles on the internet and as a user on Twitter, we have to accept the terms on Twitter, which is we have to give all of the copyright to Twitter, which means Twitter will own all of the tweets.
Sure. So the person responsible for actually tweeting the tweet is always going to be the business owner. I'm never going to tweet for you. That's one. Two, it's pretty much all the content is available on the internet. The tweet itself, are you saying there's copyright issues or concerns about the tweet content itself? So that 140 characters with a link to an article. I haven't investigated that. I'm not aware of any copyright issues there. But yeah, I mean, it's really the responsibility of the persons who owns the Twitter account, who manages that, to, before they click tweet, to kind of ensure that it's what they want.
The folks from Redpoint, I'm sorry I didn't get your names, but on the cost and benefit, you've got in here they printed out that it's reducing care cost. And how is that?
Anytime you have an early restart, that's nurse's time. It's another IV kit. Studies show that typical nurse in a 40-hour shift spends about an hour doing IV restarts.
And what is the, when you talk about the 70% failures, is there a particular marketplace that shows itself most?
Acute care is where the studies were done, inside hospitals.
Ron Merriman, CEO. He
Thanks,
didn't
Val.
get his name.
So have you done usability testing on the droplets? Because I know, having worked in web design,
Right.
finding kind of pop-ups that just show up randomly tend to be jarring to users and sometimes actually turn them away from going to a website. So have you done usability testing to make sure that users are okay with that? And then have you also looked at other ways of potentially showing that information as opposed to a pop-up?
Right. So I guess we'll say kind of in both things. So under certain circumstances, they can be kind of jarring, which is why with Droplet, we allow you to place that thing wherever you want to in the most gentle way that you want. Again, it's the website owner that's engaging their visitors. And just like in a sale, right? Someone will walk up to you in the car lot. We see that as a similar kind of an interaction. So the ability to just present it gently on the side. And yeah, we have looked at maybe placing it like a banner ad or something like that sits on the side or on the top. Right, simply a JavaScript change. Yeah, thanks.
I have a question for you as well for Clever Rain.
Sure.
So what's the how much can you customize what those droplets look like with your own artwork or your own information?
It is 100% customizable. So one of the beauties I see in Droplet is that it is not tied to one language or one area. So we've already been speaking to people in Europe and Asia about using this on their sites because we can target in, and drop an Italian droplet on a site or a French droplet on the site, depending on where the person's coming in from.
Other questions from the audience?
Lots of questions. I have a question actually for BookieJar. Okay, so let's say you're an author, aspiring author, you go on your website, you start writing chapters, it takes off, right? And then you write your book. Now what? So you have this ebook, right?
Yeah.
Do you have capabilities then to publish it or into like a hard copy and sell it and get it on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles? Or do you then have to take that book and then go to another platform and publish it on there?
So right now we have distribution deal to Kobo. We are going to sign up with more other bigger bookstores. And right now when we take WordFire take the submission as WordFire, we actually create ebooks. We convert WordFire into ebooks so that the consumers can either read online or they can download these ebooks to their Kindle or Nook or other devices to read already. And actually, there are many writers. Once they self-publish and being successful, there are those big publishers will pursue them and try to sign them up. Last year, there was a debut writer who was never accepted by any big publisher earlier, but she did self-publishing and started to sell millions of copies of her 99-cent books, and then these publishers comes to try to sign her up. It's funny. She said earlier, I wanted you, but now I don't need you anymore.
I have a question about Chubsy. How do you make sure that the quality of tweets is good if you don't have the same workers looking at your tweets?
So quality in terms of crowdsourcing is something I could talk all day on and have discussions about. It's from a broader perspective, as crowdsourcing matures, it's an area that a lot of companies are investing in. My partner, Nathan McFarland of Casting Words, has been in this business for 6 years, managing transcription on top of audio files for a long time. And we're leveraging kind of his back-end workflows, as well as, like I said, reputation systems. So it's true, you're not going to get this necessarily always the same workers who are working on your tasks, but there's actually a high degree of workers who come back repeatedly day in and day out, and they will get to know your tasks, and they will also get to know the individual companies who are using your service. But the service lives or die by our ability to bring quality results. And that's for a tweet, that's not a lot of characters to deal with. There's some people trying to do blog postings via crowdsourcing as well. And that's I think that is actually a really hard challenge.
Right. So the question is more about the quality is hard in general, but the question is like there are some workers who really understand what your business is. Mm-hmm. If they come back repeatedly, they could comment better, but there's no guarantee that you get those workers again and again. So that's how do you ensure that?
So it's about growing So over time, the good workers will earn a higher reputation, and those workers are responsible for grading, validating, and editing the content to ensure a high degree of usefulness, accuracy, and that this tweet is actually noteworthy and is actually relevant for the business. So there's the new people are always allowed to write tweets start the draft writing process, but the quality control mechanisms and workflows, those are what ensure the quality. And it's the people who are consistent workers who are, we basically allow to do that process. So, yeah.
I think we had one more question before our judges are filing back in, but here you go.
This is a question for Avado. So as a patient who's been invited by a physician to join their site, do you envision that the patient will have access to that site, to those medical records for just a short time, for eternity, I'm imagining the situation where as a patient, I'm moving from one doctor to another and no longer utilizing this specific doctor's services.
Yes, so as long as that practice is sharing information, this is one of the big differences with as compared to provider-centric, what are called patient portals. So like Group Health here, they reputed to have a good one, but if you leave Group Health, you're out of luck. You have to pay $1 a page to get out that. So that's, once the provider's shared, then that's yours for as long as you want to keep it. And that's really vital because nobody has one provider their entire life.
Thanks everyone for your questions. Looks like we have a verdict.
All right, so like we like to say here, you're all winners, but someone's going home with a plaque. And it was very close. And ultimately, the winner today is going to walk home with a nice little plaque commemorating the evening, and talk to Hannah as well. She is our proxy for Adobe, who usually gives some very nice software to the winner as well. And the judges have selected Red Point. All right, and we have the room for 10 more minutes, so thank you for coming this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Good job. Congratulations.